Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop. Stand still, that's the motto, yeah. Brand new bands for the auto, oh. Foot to the ground, full throttle. Big energy for the night like lotto. Y'all talk lots, never this quiet. Life like a Seinfeld plot. Vault full of songs, all of them bombs. Something like a minefield guy, boom. Get it, tickets running out quick. Bet it, never get it outbid. Said it, never had to shout it. They said I couldn't ever do it, okay, how's this? Fit a week worth of work in a minute. Machine well oiled, you know how I stay efficient. To-do list written, I do this different. Hold up, wait a minute, I ain't finished. Okay. Look, flows the same now. Paved the way, the snakes and fakes are chased out. Back to back to back, I changed the pace now. Had to stack the cash until the bank's out. Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop.
Walker Rowe joins us today from Pax8. Walker is a certified Microsoft subject matter expert, channel expert, and he graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder. Our very own Noah Pfister is here to demonstrate some of the features of Microsoft Copilot. He's currently NetGain's training and development manager, but has a background in technology OneSource and remote monitoring and management. We have a great session planned for today, designed for companies just like yours. You'll see a comparison of AI tools such as Copilot and Copilot for Microsoft 365. We will then dive into a demo experience. There will be opportunities to engage via polls throughout the webinar. Please enter any questions you have in the chat, and we will answer as many as possible towards the end. We will play a couple of short videos during the webinar. If you are watching the recording of this webinar, you won't see the videos, but you will still be able to access them. We're going to start off with a poll question, and it is, are you already using AI in your daily business operations? Get this launched here. Okay. You can click right there on your screen. Pretty good split here. Awesome. The majority of you are not using AI yet. Looks like some of you are, so that's great. All right, Walker, we'll let you get started.
Well, yes, thank you for the introduction. Like Ashley mentioned, my name is Walker Rowe. I come here from Pax8, licensing and Microsoft partner of NetGain Technologies. We'll try to make this relevant to everybody who answered yes and everybody who answered no, because I think there's a little bit for everybody in here. You know, this being kind of a new version of AI, of course, it's brand new on the marketplace. People are unfamiliar with it, what it can do. So part of our goal here today is to get you to think about what problems it can solve in the context of your business challenges, and also what value it can provide in terms of efficiency gains and just ease of work-life balance, really, is what it plays into, time savings. This graphic right here on this page illustrates a couple of the main reasons that Microsoft has brought the Copilot product to market. 64% of employees right now have been polled as facing time constraint challenges. And what we mean by that is the amount of hours that are in the day are insufficient to do their job. And so that results in people having to work harder. Maybe you have to increase headcount, and just generally being inefficient with the time that you have, because of things like Excel formulas, which we'll get into later. It's a personal weakness of mine, right? Leaders say that they're 2 times more likely to adopt AI, and that they think it will boost productivity. And this is really meant to be a value add. And we want to stress that point here. You know, when people think AI, you might let your mind drift to the kind of the Skynet replace people concept. But the Copilot product is powered by users. And the only outputs that it puts out are based on the inputs that you put into it. So as creative as you can be, you're going to increase the quality of the output that Copilot gives back to you. We want to empower people with AI. So we want to put this in the hands of people who are going to get the most utility out of it. And the managers that we have polled and that Microsoft has polled recognize the value of AI in boosting productivity. And it's important to recognize too that at a successful and healthy organization, the prioritization is on empowering employees. And this is what the Copilot product is meant to do. It's ready for the SMB market. We think that small and medium-sized businesses are ready to embrace AI to recognize its full potential benefits. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the why and the how here throughout this presentation. So as we prepare for the era of AI, it's important to run through these 5 main questions to ask yourself, and then hopefully throughout the presentation, we'll present enough information to answer those questions. So what are your goals for using AI? And if anybody feels compelled, feel free, like Ashley said, to drop these in the chat. What are the pain points within your organization that can be addressed with AI? What are your current AI capabilities? Do you have a data strategy in place as an organization? And do you have the necessary infrastructure and resources to support AI initiatives? And as we're going to really dive into that last point, there's not a lot of lift needed to deploy the Copilot product and its own brand of AI in your day-to-day business operations. It's meant to be a seamless integration with what you're already doing. So, as we're going to talk about here in a minute, there are a couple of different flavors of the Copilot product. The one that most people on the call here today have access to is formerly known as Bing Chat Enterprise. And so we call it Copilot. And it's the version that comes with the Edge browser natively. Any Microsoft 365 user, for the most part, with a couple of exceptions on licensing restrictions, are going to have access to this version of Copilot. And the idea is that right now, kind of the workflow when somebody's interfacing with an internet browser is that you search for keywords, and then you get pages and pages of links with articles. The idea behind the Copilot product specifically is that you can come up with a general query or a concept or an idea, and then you can get a result back, and that spans summaries, analyses, tables, content, and even image creation, which can be as creative as you can be. It also allows you to do the same thing with your organizations, and we'll talk about that. So just understand that the architecture behind the Copilot product is the same architecture behind the Dataverse, which is an encompassing catch-all term for the Microsoft repository of information. So think SharePoint. If you guys play around with the Power Platform at all, Dynamics 365, all of this is on the Dataverse architecture. So are you aware, and this is kind of a question for everybody on the call here, and something to think about, that using public AI exposes your data to potential risks? I was talking to a coworker recently, and we don't have, the full-fledged Copilot across the board. Some people have it. And this person indicated to me that they were using ChatGPT in order to get answers and to synthesize information. And the one thing that I want you all to keep in mind here is while that's a totally viable AI product, and the underpinnings of that are the same as the Copilot product, the difference is data security. So Microsoft has taken some extra steps to make sure that the Copilot product has more security built into it, layered on the identity management component of Office 365 than you're going to find with like an open source AI model. So if you guys, and sorry, I totally took this from Ashley, but if you guys could to go through and just fill out this poll question as well, that'd be fantastic. Just want to get a read on the room and see, how many people knew that before we talked about it.
One thing I'll add, Walker, is public AI is taking in a lot of information from a lot of different places, and there have actually been reports of, ChatGPT, for example, actually spitting out confidential data. Confidential data for a company out to random users, because really the AIs that we're working with nowadays, they are really just they're taking the data that we give in, and that's how they learn, right? So if what you ask just happens to kind of coincide with some data that maybe somebody uploaded, maybe even some confidential data, then it has the potential to spit that data back out to someone else completely unrelated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So A couple of things to mention about the Copilot product and the security you put in place. To Noah's point, there are a lot of products out there that just ingest information in order to learn and enhance their model. And there is a potential when that information is used for training purposes of the AI model that you're interfacing with for it to regurgitate that back out in a context that you don't want. And so it's important to keep in mind that when you're using the Copilot product, and again, we're talking Copilot. So this is the one that comes with the Edge browser. You can also access it through Chrome. We'll get into that in a minute. But you sign in with your work account, and your Microsoft work account is the identity management component here that ties this whole thing together. While you're using the Copilot product, no human eyes will ever interface with the data, the queries, or the results that you put in and get out of the Copilot interface. And after you get a result from Copilot, it will be discarded. So as just a matter of housekeeping, if you do use the Copilot product, make sure that you save your output before you close the browser, before you end the session. After a certain amount of time, the session will time itself out. And so there's a little bit of a kind of, if you get up off of your desk, you walk away for a minute, get a sip of water, do whatever, it will also end that chat session. So there's a bit of security built in if you're also considering it from a workstation perspective. So why Copilot? So why are we talking about it today? Why is it important? Why is it in the marketplace? The big thing that we're interested in is the large language model bridging the gap between the average person who's going to be using something like an AI tool and the capabilities of a typically technically trained power user. There's a pretty wide gulf between that, right? So somebody who went to school for and spends all day doing Excel is going to be very proficient, as an example. Somebody who uses Excel as part of their day-to-day operations, like myself, but doesn't have to spend enough time getting really, really good at it. Expense reports would be another example of this. You're going to have inherent inefficiencies due to lack of muscle memory or potential knowledge gaps that you have to go out and pair up. And so Copilot has brought powerful AI models to the marketplace. We talked about GPT-4. That is the architecture for text. So text to prompt. So prompts are just going to be text that you put in. You could do it in plain English. You add context, you add flavor. If you want a business professional tone, if you want a casual tone, if you want an aggressive tone, if you want a gentle reminder tone, all of these things are based on this text to prompt large language model underpinning the ChatGPT-4 model, which is what Copilot is using. If you're curious about image creation, so you can really give it any sort of prompt that you can think of, like we mentioned before. It uses the DALL-E architecture to generate those images. Transparent about sources. Whenever you get a result from Copilot, it's going to cite all of the sources. So as you're running through and you're looking at the summary of the analyses or whatever Copilot spit out based on the prompt that you put in, it's going to cite everywhere that it went and found that information for you. If you click into it, it's going to take you to that web page. Now, Copilot does take extra steps to make sure that the sources that it cites are accurate and trusted sources. But of course, there's no replacement for human eyes. And so whenever you're using a product like Copilot, it's important to check the sources. Make sure it's something that you personally would use. There's no knowledge cutoff either. You're always going to get updated answers. So if you ask it, for example, is the Earth at the center of the solar system? This is something that modern research has said no, right? That's a bad example because we've known that as long as I've been alive. But if you were to think about something topical, like what's going on with the MSRP of a Ford F-150, it's going to provide you the updated pricing information. It's not going to give it to you from 5 years ago, right? And so the Copilot model also has this built-in intelligence to always be looking for up-to-date information or amendments or updates to previous replies or responses or understood information. And of course, commercial data protection is also in play. They do not save the prompts or answers like I talked about on the last slide. When you get something out of the Copilot interface, make sure that you save it and that you can access it later. It's important because they do not save it or use it to train the models. To Noah's point, he gave a great example of somebody putting in confidential information and it's spitting that out as a source that it's cited against for somebody else's query. You do not have to worry about that with Copilot product whatsoever.
One thing to add on to that is going on along with it having the most up-to-date information. Free AI models, say like the free version of ChatGPT by OpenAI, that does have a date cutoff, right? So it's not going to have up-to-date information. And while it does give a disclaimer at the bottom of the page that shows that date, it's in the results. It's not going to actively tell you hey, this is the answer that I have right now, but I'm working off of old data. So especially working in these, older, more date constricted models, you really have to be careful about the validity and the accuracy of the answers that it's providing you.
Exactly. Exactly. Very good point. So as we're getting started with the Copilot product, and hopefully this is not the only thing that you take away from this, but Copilot is also built in to automate some of the menial tasks that you do on a day-to-day basis. And so this is kind of an open-ended question. I know we have this chat running, but if you could think of something that you do on a regular basis that takes a lot of time, that's not necessarily revenue generating activity or something that you want to spend a lot of time on. And again, I know I've talked about Excel a couple of times, but personal example here on Friday, I had to write a VLOOKUP formula. And I sat there at my desk and stared at it for like 45 minutes before I remembered that, oh, I've got to lock the table array with the $sign trick. Now, if I had the Copilot product in place on Excel, I could just ask it to write me a VLOOKUP. I could specify in plain English which columns and which rows I'm interested in, and then it would give me an example, and then all I'd have to do at that point is tweak it if it didn't give it to me perfectly the first time around. So something on that you do that everybody on this call here does on a regular basis, you're not proficient at, so it takes more time than it should. If you have an example that you're willing to share, feel free to put it in the chat, or you could have a conversation with your NetGain team after the fact, because these are the problems that we're trying to solve with the Copilot product, is things that take more time than you think that they should. And you can really apply this across the entire span of the Office 365 ecosystem. We're going to dive into the Copilot for Microsoft 365 product here in just a minute. I want to show you how you can actually get in and start using the Bing Chat Enterprise, the one that we've been talking about, the Copilot product. Because like I said at the beginning of this call, most people on here are going to have access to that tool just by virtue of having a Microsoft account. And then I want to also just tease the differentiation between the different products. We also have Copilot for Microsoft 365, which the differentiator there being that it works in the applications in the Office 365 suite. So we talked about Dataverse. This is tying it back to Dataverse. Dataverse is the underpinning architecture that connects all of these different data points and services, such as Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and SharePoint. And so the Copilot product is built and architected to follow you across everything that you're working in and then provide helpful prompts, suggestions, and advice, as well as those results that I talked about, such as creating a PowerPoint out of a Word document. I'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. So I hope you guys are getting excited about the possibilities and starting to think about how you can apply Copilot in your day-to-day operations. As far as accessing Copilot, so again, the Edge browser is fairly simple. You just launch Edge. You're going to see a new little ribbon. If you haven't looked at it in a while, it's going to be at the top right. That is the Copilot button. You can actually see on this slide right here where we've got the Microsoft Edge app on mobile graphic. In there is a multicolored version of it. The one that you'll see in the Edge browser is going to be just a blue ribbon. You could go to bing.com/chat. You can, of course, access the Microsoft Edge sidebar like we were talking about. Click on that ribbon. Microsoft Edge on mobile, you have a Windows version that sits right on your desktop. And then you can go to copilot.microsoft.com. So for anybody following along on today's call, feel free to open up one of those options and just have it on standby so that you could play around with it a little bit and get some good questions percolating for us to talk about and answer here at the Q&A section at the end of the presentation. As far as accessing it, we alluded to this, but Chrome and Edge are the two browsers. They're both based on the Chromium architecture. Not that you necessarily need to know that, but just know that you can access it through Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge. Those are both supported browsers. You're going to have more features within the Edge browser. And so that's my advice, is to use that if you're going to be interfacing with the Copilot product. Of course, if you get the actual desktop icon installed on your device, then you don't have to worry about going to Edge to access Copilot. It's just going to be readily available for you at any time. Same goes with the mobile app. So if you guys are following along with us here today, first thing you got to do is go to bing.com, hit that little ribbon. So we put a nice little graphic representation. Like I said, it's mostly blue. I guess it's got a little bit of green in it as well. You'll see that at the top right of your Edge browser. And do make sure that you're signed in with your work account. So we talked about data protections. And again, we just want to underscore this point. without trying to belabor it too much. But if you're not signed in with your work account, your data is not protected while using AI chat. So if you don't have that Microsoft built-in protection, it kind of reverts back to the same pitfalls as some of the open AI solutions that are out there, where your company data, your queries, the things that you put in, if you ask it to rewrite an email for you, for example, it's not going to protect the contents of that email unless you're signed in with your work account. Now you can know and tell visually that you are signed in and protected because you'll see your account information with your avatar, and you will see a little green box that says protected next to your credentials. We're going to go on a quick visual tour of Copilot, and I'll just talk you guys through this as we work through it. So you have your advanced protected queues. So the word protected indicates that you're using Copilot with commercial data protection. Again, if you see the protected icon, you see the protected word, that means that it's just a visual confirmation that you're signed in with your work account. Conversation styles. So these are things, it's going to give you a couple recommendations and prompts, but like I was saying before, you can take an aggressive tone, you can take a professional tone, you can take a casual tone. For whatever outputs, whether that be crafting an email or coming up with a PowerPoint presentation or summarizing a couple of web pages onto a Word document in bulleted point format, because yes, it can do that for you. You can also dictate what kind of conversation style the output is going to be in the format of. If you want to start a new chat, that button's at the bottom. Text box obviously is where you put in your questions, your prompts, your queries, or point it towards different sources of information. And then suggested prompts. This is fun for people who are just starting to dip their toes into the Copilot product and maybe don't have a good feel for what sort of questions they should be asking. This will just give you a couple recommendations to get started, and then the sky's the limit from that point forward. The Windows version, just talk about this a little bit. So if you use the Windows version here, you've got the same thing: protected badge, suggested prompts, conversation styles, text box. Now, you use the Edge browser, you're going to get this little sidebar interface as well. So just something to keep in mind here. It's going to look and feel the same, regardless of how you access it. We'll talk about chatting, so how to do it. First thing is into your prompt. And again, be as detailed as possible. So the word detailed is in here just to kind of demonstrate the importance of good prompts providing good results. And so we'll talk about what is a good and a bad prompt here in just a second, but just think about some sort of a question. If you were to ask like your friend or an assistant or a colleague, a coworker to do something for you, you would want to be as detailed as possible, right? If you were to say, hey, for example, read this web page and then tell me about it. Read the web page, tell me about it. That's relatively vague, right? So Copilot does not have kind of the nuance that a coworker might have who's got background context. Okay, well, Walker, when he asks for a summary or summarizing a page, really what he's looking for is like bullet points, and he really doesn't want to see more than 8 bullet points. This is the kind of thing that you want to use in your prompt, because then Copilot will give you a more customized and accurate response based on your desires. Check your sources. We talked again about the human eyes being irreplaceable. Sources are going to be cited. Copilot does take extra measures to make sure that it goes to reputable places to find information and data, but it's important as the user, the wielder of this tool, to check those sources. And then if you want to ask like follow-up questions, like maybe the result that it spat out was not exactly what you were looking for, and you want it to be reworked, you can have it do that for you. So for example, write a shorter answer, give me more detail, or it's going to give you some suggested prompts. Now, the suggested prompts on the fly are actually going to be tailored to the questions and the content that you got out of the Copilot product. So if you just launch it, the suggested prompts are going to be pretty vague. But as you're interfacing with the Copilot product, it actually does try to pare it down and narrow it down to things that it thinks might be relevant for that next step of where you might want to go with it. All right, so we've used the word prompt quite a bit. We've talked about it. Again, it's just a question or an instruction that you enter in the text box. Main thing to take away from this is that you should use your natural language. Don't feel like you need to like condense it down to keywords or get too crazy with it, because the Copilot uses, again, that large language model, which translates plain English requests into actions that Copilot can execute on the back end. So classic search, that's what we all are familiar with. You go in, you launch your browser, and you punch in a couple of things. I use the example of a Ford truck. I'm a fan of Ford trucks. If you were to go through and you were to say, keyword version of this, 2024 Ford, F-150, the trim level that you're interested in, and then MSRP. These are the keywords that you would use, right? If that same prompt was being run through Copilot, you would just ask it, how much are the different trims? How much is an F-150? How much is an F-150? And it's going to go out, and to Noah's point, it's going to have up-to-date information. It's going to say, here's 2024 models, here's the different trim levels. Would you like to look at a dealership in your area or something like that? It's what is that next step going to look like? But it gives you specific answers based on the prompt. And the up-to-date information piece is important here. So if you guys are following along with this on your browser, go ahead, fire up a prompt, check it out.
The natural language part I wanted to expand on a little bit from what Walker was talking about. The large language model that we're talking about is basically the AI's attempt at taking in human language in the way that we speak to each other. So I find myself when I'm creating prompts sometimes almost talking to it as if it was a human. And really that should be your goal while being descriptive with your prompt. So sometimes I start off my prompt with, hey, or when I first started using AI, I found myself like saying, hey, Copilot, can you do this for me, please? And because it's actually looking for tone indicators in your prompts, it's looking for the way that you phrase things, it's actually going to respond to the tone that you're giving it. So, for example, the difference between, hey, can you give me the MSRP of this truck? Or, hey, can you please give me the MSRP of this truck? You wouldn't think a computer, a machine really to understand the kind of intricacies of like being polite and stuff, but where it has such a large knowledge base of human knowledge, it will actually respond back sometimes and say, and thank you for saying please, for example. I've even had it sometimes give better answers because I was being polite to it. Now that's not even a necessity. You don't have to do that, but it is something to consider.
100%. Yeah. And you can always, of course, ask it to rewrite or reformat a response. But to Noah's point, if you give it the same tone that you would typically use in a conversation with a coworker, let's say, then it's going to give you a more accurate result back based on something that sounds like something that you would actually say. And so, yes, context is 100% important. Tone is important. I always put in please. Can you please summarize this for me as an example? Because it's something that I would say to somebody that I was working with, right? So as far as effective prompting goes, you want to be specific and detailed. You want to use full sentences with instructions. There's a good example at the bottom here, right? Recap the findings of the article I've copied below. Include top 3 concerns. Provide the answer in 2 to 3 paragraphs. Use a business tone. That's going to give you pretty close to what you want. Less effective prompting would be, and this doesn't mean that you did it wrong, it just means that you're probably going to have to put in a couple of follow-up prompts to get exactly what you want out of it, right? So don't feel like this is a make or break sort of thing, but really want to give you some guidance here, from our side of using this tool and being familiar with it, of what works well. So recap article, probably a bad prompt. It's not going to give you specifically what you're looking for. That means so many different things to so many different people.
Oh, Ashley, you're muted.
Sorry, guys. Copilot is embedded across Microsoft 365 apps. It will allow you to be more creative in Word, more analytical in Excel, expressive in PowerPoint, productive in Outlook, etc. We're going to watch a quick video demonstration on Copilot and Microsoft Teams right now.
Imagine you have an appointment that conflicts with your weekly business review. What if you could do both? With Copilot, you can opt to follow a meeting. After the meeting ends, Copilot will summarize what you missed. You'll get a notification in Teams when the recap is ready. This recap will highlight content that was shared, summarize notes, and any action items for you or others whose names were mentioned. You see that one of your customers was discussed, and you want to learn more. You can ask Copilot clarifying questions. and it provides a detailed response. It can tell you why a certain decision was made, and gives you helpful context. You can even ask Copilot what other solutions were considered, and it provides citations from the transcript so you can see where Copilot drew these conclusions. It's a huge time saver. So that was pretty cool. But the real magic of Copilot happens during a live meeting. Let's say you're in a meeting with your team. You can ask Copilot to summarize the meeting so far. You can see how it summarizes who said what points were made, and it's really capturing the spirit of the discussion. And as the meeting progresses, you can check in on where people stand. You can even ask Copilot what questions are unresolved. It's just amazing to see this happen in real time during a meeting.
So we just saw a little bit of information about how you can actually go through and use real-time Copilot in a Teams meeting scenario. And I hope you guys, I know he's not the most exciting person and he's a little bit monotonous in the tone, but the concept here of being able to go through real time in a meeting and get kind of updates and status updates without having a dedicated note taker, I think is huge. And you can really understand the power of the Copilot product if you look at it through the lens of your day-to-day operations. I mean, I think back on meetings that I've had and it's like, okay, Noah wants me to go out and do this. Ashley wants me to follow up with this. And if I'm paying attention to the conversation and I'm truly involved in the discussion, it's really hard for me as an individual contributor to go and take notes at the same time. You split your attention, you split your focus, you're always going to be a little bit lower performance in one area over the other. And so the idea here is that you don't have to really worry yourself about what's going on in the meeting other than participating in it and adding your knowledge and adding your expertise. And then after the fact, or even throughout the meeting, you can ask it real-time questions as if you were sitting there with a dedicated note taker and you could just tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, what did Noah say so far? What's his opinion on this Copilot presentation that we're doing right now? It could actually go through and it could give us an answer and it could back it up with facts based on the content of the meeting thus far. And so really the kind of the power here is to take a lot of information that we're exposed to on a daily basis and turn it into a usable and digestible format. So I just want to touch on a couple of quick things here. The recap experience is built into Teams, the Copilot product. It's automated, automatically happens for you. It's familiar, standardized. It's always going to give you a consistent experience. It is segmented, so it's broken out with video timeline markers. So if you're watching a recording, for example, and you want to go back and watch the exact interaction or conversation that's being cited or talked about, it will give you timestamps on that. As soon as the meeting is over, you'll be able to access it. So long as you have licensing for it, you can access this today. It's available, it's on the market, it's ready to go. Copilot enhancement, we talk about the conversational piece. It's also on demand, so you can ask it unique questions or prompts, and it's going to respond to those in kind. During and after the meeting, we talked about that. We saw it in the video a little bit. You can ask it the questions during the meeting and after the meeting, so don't feel like you have to wait until the very end. And then, of course, insights and discovery. We think it's going to take collaboration to the next level. Now, one thing to mention here is Teams Premium is something that you would also want to leverage in this scenario. So Intelligent Recap is already included with Teams Premium today. It pairs well with the Microsoft Copilot product. We saw a demonstration in that video of those two working together seamlessly.
Share this quick video about Outlook, Microsoft Word, and Excel.
When you've written a paragraph in shorthand, you can highlight it and click Rewrite. Copilot then offers several alternate options to choose from that are all written professionally. And it can translate wordy or complex paragraphs into digestible visualized tables. You can even use Copilot to add a column with extra data, which it can complete automatically. Copilot also makes you the expert on any document. Simply ask a question about the content, and Copilot will provide a concise response. Copilot in Outlook can help you prioritize your time and stay on top of meetings. Here you've been invited to a meeting that conflicts with the meeting you're planning to attend. Clearly, you can only attend one. From the meeting invite, you can choose to RSVP with follow. Switching over to your calendar, you can see that you're now following this meeting. Once the meeting starts on Teams, the organizer will receive a notification to record the meeting because someone is following it. Now, after the meeting is done and the recording is ready, Copilot will notify you that the meeting recap is ready for you to review. You can then ask Copilot some questions about the meeting, like, summarize this meeting, or are there any action items for me? That way you can stay on top of things as if you were present during the meeting. Copilot puts all the rich capabilities of Excel at your fingertips. Say you need to analyze this quarter's sales results for the monthly business review. You start by asking Copilot to analyze the data and give you 3 key trends. Within seconds, you've got what you need, but you want to drill in. You ask Copilot a follow-up question about one of the trends. Copilot creates a new sheet, giving you a sandbox to play in, and helping you get a better understanding of what's happening without modifying the data in the original sheet. You ask Copilot to visualize what contributed to the decline in sales growth this period. Copilot adds a little color to make the problem jump off the page. Now you want to dig a little deeper and ask a follow-up question with a what-if scenario. Copilot not only answers your question, it creates a simple model of the scenario, and even asks you if you want to learn more about what it did, with a step-by-step breakdown. Finally, you can ask it to create a graph of your projected model. Copilot has turned a sea of data into clear insights and actions.
All right, cool. So I hope that, guys, you start to think about the ways that you can use this product in your day-to-day operations. I hope that kind of bridges the gap between, I know it's a little conceptual to even talk about all this stuff, but I think that those videos are a really good highlight of how you're actually going to be interfacing with the product and what it's capable of doing for you. Again, we've talked about this, so we'll kind of breeze through these a little bit. Do check your sources, that's important. As we're going through, save your output. So whenever you get things out of Copilot, want to focus on, getting those results out, saving them yourself. Again, Copilot does not save these results. And so as you're going through and checking your sources, you can drill into what it actually cited, just like we saw in that presentation where it was pulling from a meeting invite or a Word document, what have you. Same is true across the board. Again, short-term memory here does not save your output. So do make sure to take extra steps yourself to do that, because it will not do that for you.
Now that we've covered the Copilot product and how to use it, we want to spend a little time talking about how to maximize your ROI from the Copilot product.
100%. And just to get the gears turning a little bit, if your day looks like this on the left, here's how you would use Copilot on the right, with some sample ideas or concepts for prompts. So found some great articles, you want to quickly make sense of them, maybe you want the key points from each of those, you can ask it to summarize the content. Got a bunch of ideas from different web pages, you're ready to write them up as an email or report, write an email based on these bullet points or this data source. And you can really get fancy with that too. Like if you're talking to somebody about a product that you manufacture or something that you sell and you want to highlight the things that are differentiators or important to you, you can have it do exactly that. Maybe you can't find a stock image that fits what you're conceptually thinking of, what you want to use. You can have it create an image for you. Got a couple blog posts and videos to learn something new. But really, you're more of kind of a visual learner in the sense that you like to read the responses. You can ask it to digest it, give you the important information, the key takeaways. Maybe you've got multiple articles with different perspectives on a topic. You're having a hard time making a decision. Again, I know not everybody's going to be like a Ford fan on this meeting, so maybe you're looking at Chevy and Toyota, and just taking it back to the truck example here. You can literally ask it to compare these options, and it will give you the pros and cons of each. So sample prompts. If you're looking for some ideas when it comes to creating prompts, here's a couple that we have pulled up for you. So write, compare, analyze, laugh. which is a good joke if you're looking for an icebreaker or something. We always like to include a dad joke on our end of day meetings here at Pax8, and so it could be difficult to come up with those. Obviously, you have a couple of good web pages. You can actually ask Copilot to go find you some like funny jokes, and it will do that for you. No, it sounds silly. Coding, if you want to ask questions about something like Python or JavaScript, you can ask what are the new features in the latest release. Maybe you follow video games or something along those lines that get constantly updated, or some sort of a hardware or piece of product. You can ask what's new in the new Apple iPhone, and it'll tell you exactly what's different from the previous version of the Apple iPhone, right? And so it's important to keep in mind that it also can help you learn. So if you want to set achievable goals at work, this is kind of a vague concept, and it means different things to different people, but it understands in the context of what your company does, because you can point it back at the web page and say, based off of this job description, can you please tell me what would be some achievable goals at work that I should be striving towards? What matters, right? In the context of my role as an individual contributor or leadership, whatever it may be.
To find inspiration for those kinds of things, what I do pretty often, and this might seem silly at first, but I will sometimes literally ask Copilot, hey, I'm trying to do X task. How can Copilot help me achieve that? Or I might say, what kind of prompt could I use to help me out with X task? And Copilot does a great job. Sometimes you know that Copilot can help, but you're not really sure how to word getting that help from it, and it does a great job of actually assisting with that. So sometimes not knowing the prompt, asking what the prompt should be, can be quite helpful.
100%. 100%. So if you guys are following along with us on this meeting invite, try to summarize a web page, PDF, or document. And I'm sure Ashley will talk about this too. I saw a little message come through that some people weren't able to hear the videos. We'll have all of those ready to go for you guys so you can watch them. There's just a little bit of context that the video, that the audio provides to the video as far as the walkthroughs and what tasks they're performing. The visual of it is something that Noah is actually going to show for us. So don't feel too bad if you really want to understand the content of those demonstrations. Again, they will be available after the fact, so you can go watch them. They're about a minute each, so definitely worth the time. And then Noah's going to show us some live stuff here. So I just wanted to pause real quick and address that concern. Sorry about that. You try to do everything right before a meeting. Sometimes technology fights you. Copilot does not fight you, though. It helps you. And so just to bring it back to the subject at hand here, it is something that we're trying to put out there and help everybody understand a little bit more about how it can assist your day-to-day operations. So again, if you guys are following along with us, find a web page, PDF, document, ask it to summarize it for you. I think you'll be impressed with the results you get. You can also ask it to write an email. So we've talked about this in the context of a couple of different scenarios, but maybe you have a web page for your business or for something interesting to you, and you'd like to write an email based on that content. Really, the fundamental feature here is that you can direct Copilot at specific content. And so that could be web content, that could be a Word document that you wrote up, that could be an Excel table that you created to project your financial data across the next quarter. You want to present that to the rest of the team, maybe to investors. It really can be very, very specific in terms of the results that it gives back based on the documentation, the content that you pointed at, and the prompt that you give it. So we're trying to kind of tie everything together here in terms of the human connection, the data that you want it to look at, the context of the result that it's going to give you, and then of course the efficiency play that just naturally comes into it when it makes all of this information and all of these functions and tasks available and readily executable in a short time frame. Another thing you can do with this, and this is just kind of a walkthrough, try to use the compose template to create professional customer ready content. Maybe you have a Word document that describes, or a web page that describes what your business does. You want a 5-slide deck about all the important things that you want to communicate downstream when you're having a conversation with somebody about what you do. You can literally have Copilot manufacture that for you.
I'm going to do some demos now of what Copilot is capable of. I'm going to be a little bit light on the demos today. I think we've got a lot of great questions ready for the Q&A section, and so I want to make sure that we can get to those. But allow me to share my screen here real quick. I'll get it moved over to this monitor. Share screen. And here it is. So right here, I have just what is formerly called Bing Chat, or you can even still see sometimes Bing itself refers to it as Bing Chat. But this is just how you access Bing. You can do that of two ways. Again, you can either use the Copilot ribbon icon in the top right corner, or you can just go to bing.com/chat. And this is going to be the version of Copilot that probably a lot of you have access to today. So you, your end users, you are going to have access to be able to play around with a lot of the stuff that I'm going to show you right now. We can see up in the top right corner, I have the protected icon, meaning that everything that I put in here is going to be protected. There's no chance of it, leaking out. Everything that stays in here is going to stay confidential. You can see in the top left corner, we have two different types. We have one that's called work and one for web. Those have different uses. Work is going to be for if you're wanting to reference things within your Dataverse. So again, like Walker was talking earlier, Microsoft refers to when they say the Dataverse, they're referring to your Teams, your Outlook, your SharePoint, your OneDrive, those types of information sources within Microsoft 365. So one thing that I'd like to demonstrate is earlier we had in a slide the ability to summarize articles. And so I just like to give an example of that. Pax8 actually has a great article on Microsoft Copilot that I'm sure we can actually link to everybody in the chat here. But I'm going to go ahead and ask Copilot to summarize this article. So for example, my prompt might be something like, please summarize the following article linked below. Provide 5 bullet points that I can present to board partners. Not partners at the next board meeting. So I'm giving it a little bit of context. I'm going to be presenting it to board members at a board meeting, and I'm giving it specific instructions that I need it to summarize, but I need to give 5 bullet points. And so it's going to parse through the data in this article, and it's going to pick 5 things that it thinks somebody at a board meeting would need to know about. You can see right here, it's typing as if it's, like an actual human. It's doing it really quickly. But right here, it's giving out bullet points. And so let's say, for example, this is a little bit too wordy. I need something that's a little bit more concise than this. Well, all I have to do is tell it that. So let's do just 3 bullet points with no sub-bullet points. It's going to take what it just gave me and now condense it to meet the format that I've requested. And even gives a little, feel free to share these points with your board partners. So that's just an example of how it can summarize content for you. You don't have to provide it with an article, though, for example. You could just say, provide me with the top 5 benefits of Microsoft Copilot. And it's going to go out to the internet. It's going to look through articles. You can see sometimes it'll say searching through Bing. And it's actually going to go out and actually find the relevant information for you and just put it into a way that maybe you better understand or that you need to actually provide to somebody else. So that's just an example of using the Bing Copilot. If we go over to the actual Microsoft 365 version of Copilot, this is where we have the ability to actually reference things within the Dataverse. So for example, let's say that I needed a recap of the last emails that Ashley Sebastian actually sent me in my inbox. Well, I only have to ask, provide a summary of the last emails that Ashley Sebastian sent me. It's going to go through my Outlook inbox and actually search for that content and summarize it for me. So you can see right here, she sent me an email with the background that I'm using for the green screen. She sent an email with just a reminder, hey, we need to log on to GoToMeeting for the webinar. And then she also gave an email about the webinar itself and asked that I attach some relevant information. And the great part about Copilot is you can actually click on these links right here, and it's going to take you directly to the content that it's referencing. It's going to take you straight to that email in Outlook. Let's talk a little bit about Teams. Here I have a Teams chat, just a blank one. This is just a fake chat. But let's say I'm conversing with somebody on Teams, and I've got a piece of material. Let's just take actually something that Copilot gave us. So let's copy and paste what Copilot gave me here, and I'm going to paste that into my Teams box right here. Teams has Copilot for Teams has the ability to actually rewrite everything that I've put in here. So we can just have it completely rewrite the content here, and it's basically just going to rephrase everything that I have here. Or, and we'll give it a second to generate a response, I can specifically ask it to adjust the tone, the length, to make it more professional, less professional, more casual maybe. So you can see right here in real time, it is writing out and it's asking, hey, do you like what we provided here? Do you want us to replace what you have in this box with what we wrote? And sure. Well, now I think that's a little bit wordy. So I can press this, adjust, and let's make it more concise. And so it has done exactly that. You can see it actually removed quite a few words. Again, maybe we don't want it to sound so formal. Let's make it sound more enthusiastic about what Copilot can do for us. Maybe a little bit more markety. Moving on to Microsoft Word. So if you have Copilot, as soon as you open up Word or a lot of other Office applications, this little box is going to pop up. It's going to say Draft with Copilot. So the kind of the special thing about Copilot for Microsoft apps is that you have the ability to reference things again in the Dataverse. So just like in chat, how I referenced emails from Ashley, here I can actually reference documents that are located in SharePoint or in my OneDrive. So I have a document on Acme Consumer Inc., which is a fictitious company, and I have a document that I actually had Copilot create about an earnings report. Well, we can ask questions about that earnings report right here. So I could say, summarize, and I'm just going to say here, /, and then I know I have the word demo in my document right here. So summarize the detailed earnings report for Acme Consumer and word it in a way that is presentable to a group of friends. And I always do this for a demo. I don't think anybody would actually do this, but you could say, add occasional emojis. And now all we have to do is hit generate. It's actually going to go through that document, and now it's going to reword that very professional looking document into one that you could share with a buddy of yours. It can do the reverse though. It could take some very casual content and turn it into a piece of professional written content. Yeah, so the output can get silly, and that's just the great part about Copilot is it can take the context that you give it and create really something from that. Now, I want to point something out here. The document that I'm providing it, this earnings report, it is about 5 pages long. So the input that I'm providing it is actually a lot. You want to make sure that you're not trying to have Copilot create something out of nothing. So you wouldn't say, create a summary of the Acme Consumer Inc. earnings report, and there was no earnings report for it to reference. The less you give it, the more potential it has to extrapolate data and maybe not make things as accurate as you would hope they could be. So, data in, data out is really the name of the game. Let's talk about PowerPoint real fast. So, PowerPoint for Copilot for PowerPoint has the ability to edit presentations. It also has the ability to create presentations just from a topic. So I'm going to say create a 5-slide presentation on Copilot for Office 365, Microsoft 365. Include a picture for each slide. And so it's actually going to go out, get content for this presentation, and create the PowerPoint that I asked it to create. Now, again, you'll want to make sure that the slides look the way that you want it to. And you're probably going to get something a lot better, quicker, if you provide it with content to start out with. But we can see right here, 5 slides on what Copilot is capable of doing for you. I realize that a little bit short on the demos here, but I want to make sure that we are okay on time. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and we'll continue with the slides.
Yeah, and honestly, I think we covered a lot of this stuff, and I want to make sure that if there are questions that we can get to them. But just some key points here. You got to just focus on what matters most, and Copilot really frees up your time to do that. And that's kind of the name of the game here. So I hope you guys found this super informative. I'll hand it over to Ashley. Do we have questions?
Yeah. We do have some questions. It looks like we're running out of time, but I'm going to ask. We had a lot of questions come in about licensing. So Walker, what level of Microsoft licensing includes the Copilot program embedded within Microsoft applications?
Okay, so it's always a pay to play on the Copilot for Microsoft 365. If you want the applications, it's the Copilot for Microsoft 365 product. And so you do have to pay for that. Now, for the free version that we talked about, that Copilot for Bing Chat Enterprise, you've got really it's business standard all the way up. So Office 365 is going to include it for everything. Really, the 4 SKUs that if you're on one of these products doesn't have that version of it is going to be like Apps for Enterprise, Apps for Business, Exchange Online Plan 1, Exchange Online Plan 2. Everything else is going to come with it.
Well, it looks like we are out of time. There were a lot of questions that came in. We are going to follow up with each of you to answer your questions. We will also follow up with the slide deck and a copy of the recording of this if you want to share with your teams. Thank you so much, Walker and Noah. I think this was really informative and overall pretty great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having me, and really nice to be talking with everybody on the meeting here.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Yeah, thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your week.